So we are going to be dealing with properties of logarithms in this section. And what we're going to be doing in your exercises for today or for this week are rewriting logarithms using 3 rules. All right, so we've got 3 rules, and it doesn't matter what the base on our logarithm is, the same rules apply. So one of our rules is if we have a logarithm of 2 things being multiplied together, we can change that into 2 separate logarithms with addition in between. So notice that the 2 things that were multiplied together on the inside become the inside of each of these separate logs being added together. If we have something divided by something else inside of our logarithm, that can change into 2 separate logarithms with a minus sign in between. And notice that the top of whatever was inside ends up to be the first logarithm, and the bottom ends up being the logarithm with a minus sign in front of it. And then our last property is that if we have something to a power inside of our logarithm, we can just bring that power out to the front. So we're going to use these 3 rules to break up a complicated logarithm into less complicated looking logarithms. And then we're going to go the other way. We're going to start with something that's broken up, and we're going to pull it back to a logarithm that looks like this one. But first, let's deal with this one. Now, with this, generally, not always, but generally, the first thing we're going to deal with is breaking up the fraction. So notice that there is a fraction here. And according to our rule up here, if we have the log of a fraction, we're going to break it up into the log of the top minus the log of the bottom. So let's do that. We're going to have, right here, if I can get into my draw feature, log of the top of this fraction. That is 3x to the 5th minus the log of the bottom of the fraction, y to the 4th. All right, now, let's notice in this first log, we have 3 being multiplied by x to the 5th. And up here, the rule for multiplication tells us that if we have log of 2 things being multiplied, we can break them up into log of the first thing plus log of the second thing. So let's break this up into 2 separate logs. And don't forget to write the separate logs. So you'll have log of 3 and log of x to the 5th. Sometimes people want to break it up and they don't write that log in front of it, but that log has to be there. Okay, now lastly, we have this rule that says if we have something to a power, we can bring the power to the front of the logarithm. Let's notice there's a 5th power right here, so we're going to bring it out here. And there's a 4th power out here, so we're going to bring it out here. So we're going to end up with log 3. Bring that 5 to the front of this logarithm. 5 log x. Now the 5's no longer on the x anymore. And then bring the 4 out to the front. 4 log y. All right. Now, it's completely broken up. We've used all 3 rules. There's nothing but a single item inside of each logarithm, and that tells us that we are finished. Okay, so let's notice up here, the first thing we did was we dealt with the fraction. So we dealt with the division or the fraction first. And then we broke up in the second step any multiplication. So we dealt with the 3x to the 5th. And then finally, we dealt with the exponents. And we can do that in every step. But in this first one, before we can do this order that we did up here, we need to do a little bit of algebra and deal with this 3 that's outside of the parentheses. Now let's recall from algebra that if we've got an exponent on the outside of parentheses, it can distribute to every single exponent on the inside. So a is really raised to the first power. So before I start breaking this logarithm up, I can say 1 times 3 is a to the third. 3 times this 2 is b to the sixth. And on the bottom, 3 times the 4 is c to the 12th. And now it becomes a problem very similar to the last problem. All right, so let's break this up. Let's first deal with the division. So our rule for division is that if we have two things divided, it breaks up into log of the top minus log of the bottom. So let's do that. Log of the top, our top is a cubed b to the sixth, minus log of the bottom, c to the 12th. All right, now let's notice that we have two things being multiplied right here. So let's use our rule for multiplication. Our rule for multiplication says if we have two things being multiplied, we're going to break that into the log of the first thing plus log of the second thing. So our first thing is a to the third. Our second thing is b to the sixth. Let's break this up into two separate logs. Don't forget to write your logarithm twice. And notice that this is the natural logarithm, and you have to write natural logarithm and not log. It has to be the same logarithm. All right, and now let's deal with the exponents. And of course, our rule for exponents is that we can take an exponent and move it out to the front of the log. And we have three exponents. We can move this one out, we can move this one out, and we can move this one out. So it'll become 3 natural log of a, 6 natural log of b, and finally minus 12 natural log of c. And now that we don't have anything but a single variable and inside of each logarithm, we are done breaking it down. So let's look at one more. Let's rewrite log base 2 of this quantity here as a sum and difference of logarithms. So just as before, we're going to break it up. We'll start with the division. So we want to break division into subtraction. So we're going to do log of the top. And notice that I will rewrite that base that has to be with it. So log of the top minus log of the bottom. Breaking up our division first. All right, second step, let's break up multiplication. Let's notice we have these two being multiplied, but we also have these two being multiplied. We have to break them both up. So multiplication breaks up into two logarithms with addition. So let's do it to the first one. Don't forget to write that log twice. We have to write it with its base. So we've broken this up into two logs with addition. Now we're going to do the same thing to the second one, but there's a minus sign in front of it. So as I break it up, I'm going to put brackets because that minus sign is going to have to distribute afterwards. So let's break it up into two separate logarithms. Log of the first item plus log of the second item. And the reason I put that in brackets is because this minus sign really has to go to both of them. So this becomes I'll just rewrite the rest of this. This becomes minus log base 2 of c to the 5th, and distributing that minus sign, minus log base 2 of d to the 4th. All right, now let's go to our last step. Moving exponents. We've got 3 exponents to move. Let's move this 6 out here, this 5 out here, and this 4 out here. B has an exponent, it's 1, but we don't need to move a 1 to the front because of course that's really the same thing. So let's move our 6 out. We'll leave our log of b alone. Again, don't forget to write these little bitty bases. Let's move our 5 out. We'll just have C now. And let's move our 4 out. And there we have it, all broken up, nothing but variables inside of each log.